And I'll disable the preview on everything else. And there you go. Now you can scale it up. So that is the reason why I was showing you from 0 to 1, using these numbers kind of small to start, because when you have 0 to 1, you can multiply by any value to make it whatever size you want. Thank you very much for being here. I post videos like these every week where I share with you exercises and techniques so you can learn parametric design. This particular one is more about using images to create gradients and extracting the colors from it. I've seen a lot of abstract art that is very much like this. I don't know if they do it by hand or with computers, but this is one way where you could use computers to create some abstract art just from images. What we need to do is create a set of points that are going to be acting as our pixels for our image. So there are different ways that we can do this, but one way that I like to do this is by creating a plane. So we'll go here to plane, surface, and we'll change the X and Y size to 1 and 1. It's going to be a 1 by 1 plane, and we'll use that plane to create a set of points. We'll go here to divide, surface, and with divide surface, now we can divide it in the U and V, which is basically the X and Y for a surface. We'll take the U and V count and change it. So I'll bring in a slider of 25. Now we can change the density, and I'll plug in the same one for both the U and V. Here we can change the density of our overall kind of pixelation for our image. Now it's going to be 1 to 1, but at the end I'll show you how to scale this to any size. And at the same time, for this example, just to keep it a little bit more practical, I am using a 1 to 1 image. So with that being said, let's continue on using these points, and I will run this through a point component. Now, of course, we can run this just directly into the other component. Sometimes this keeps it clean, and also I can flatten the output for the next design. So now we're going to be taking these points and be going to a circle. So we're just setting the stage with a circle here on all of those points, and the radius will change. And we know that that's from 0 to 1, and we have a lot of points here. So it's going to be a small number like 0.0500. And now we have a few decimal points that we can use to change the size. In this way, we can also visualize around the size that we need to create our design, right? Like it's going to be a very small number and a small variation between this number. So now that we know this, we're going to bring in the image sampler. So one way is we can double click and bring in an image sampler. We can also drag and drop it. So when you drag and drop it, it's actually going to bring it in. But if you don't drag and drop it, you can also bring in the component. We can double click. Now we can browse here to look for the image. So now this is going to be the image. It's a square box. So I'll select this and go to open. Then here, as you can see, we have a lot of options. 0 to 1, we want to keep that. Now we can change that if we want to also change the size of the plane. But if you keep it 0 to 1, this makes it easy for us to later on come here and then scale this to be whatever size just by multiplying it. So with that, let's go to the other things that we need to be aware of. Now the tiling, this is, if you're going to repeat it multiple times, this would be an important thing to keep an eye out. Tile is the default, which is fine because it would just copy the image over and over. We're not going to be using the colors. We're going to be using the brightness for this step, and then click on interpolate. Now when you hit OK, it brings it in black and white, And this is what we're going to be using to change the size of the circles here. So now with this, we'll take the points, plug them into the image sampler. And when we take a look at the output, when you hover over the output, or let's go here to a panel, you see that we have a list of numbers. We're going to have 1,156 numbers. And if we plug those into the radius input, they're too big. So what we need to do is we need to resize those. Now we can divide it, but we can also remap the numbers to be a smaller number. So we know the number has to be as small as this slider. So what we can do is we go remap numbers. I'll plug in, I can just go here, but I want to show you as an example. We'll go here, plug in the values into the value input. Then we'll go here to bounds. And we can just plug in the same one. So you can double click, bring in a relay, and that relay use it as an input. And then the target is going to be what we want it to be. So first thing you do is the original numbers go into the value. Then you get the biggest and smallest number, which goes into the source. Then the target is going to be the numbers that we want to stay within. So we'll go to construct, domain, and I'll use this slider and copy it twice and make one almost zero, and this one that number. Now we can use that domain as our target, right? So from 0.1 to 0.0008. Now those map numbers can go into the radius. When you look at the numbers here compared to, I'm going to copy that panel, bring it over here, and even use that. So you see the numbers. So before, number 3 was 0.01. Now 3 is 0.0105. So let's go here. Let's hide, because we need to hide the points. What happens is we're looking at the points, so we can't see the design. Now we can see the design. We can hide the original plane. And you see that we can also increase the size of these and decrease those small ones. Or we could do the opposite, bring in the small ones larger. So it does like a negative effect. And if you keep them the same, well, you get the same pattern. You can get a very subtle looking pattern. So this is how basic you can get to create circles, but you don't also, like, you can also do spheres, right? Because a sphere will use this radius. So the plane is going to be the same. So I'll double click, bring in a relay, plug in the base for all of those. Okay, I realized it has too many. So what I'm going to do is go back here and reduce the number of points. So we'll go back to something like 10. And then we can come back here and now increase these. Now we can do those into the plane and the radius, change them here with those varied ones. So now can we maybe do a few more? Yep. So that's how you can get not just circles, not just, you can also do boxes, right? Because if you have a sphere, you can create a box around the sphere. You can also extrude this up, right? So we can take these circles, create a plane on them. I'll delete this and go here to boundary surfaces. Let's see if we can increase a little bit. We'll go here to 20. I think that's enough. And then here, go back to a lower number. So what's happening is it's taking this set of points, it's arraying them from 0 to 1, and where they land, it gives you a value, and that value determines the size of this, because we're able to take whatever numbers those are and remap them into whatever the biggest and smallest number, so it fits within the grid, and then that creates a plane, which now we're going to take this plane and we're going to make it display the same colors that it has. This way you can possibly even make some cool art where you can separate the colors and find the exact color and then be able to recreate it in reality. So you can take an image and create some abstract art just by using scripts like this. So here's the next step. Now we're going to take these surfaces. We're going to go here to Custom Preview. And when you bring in Custom Preview and you plug in those surfaces into geometry, you can create a color. So if I went to a color swatch and wanted to make those white or black or whatever color, then I could do that. Now the material, I want it to be the exact same as the color of the design. So what I'll do is I'll take this and I will copy this up. So I'll take this, tap Alt. Now I'll double click, so I'll give it some space here. I'll double click on the image, go to our RGBA colors, and hit OK. With these colors, now we can just plug it into the material, but I like to use a different component. Now let's just plug this straight in. So now you get the colors that you do have in the original image. And the lighter circles are smaller, and the bigger circles are darker. Now what happens is when you take this, you middle click and you bake. You do have these here under shaded mode, but you don't see the colors. Now if you go here to rendered mode, then you'll see the colors. So to get this one working, this is what I did. I ran the circles through the boundary surfaces, and those boundary surfaces then go into the geometry objects. That's on the object bake component. That'll go into the input. Then the color goes into both the object name and object color, and we need a Boolean bake toggle. We'll have it at false initially here, and then we can toggle it on to bake it, and we can see that we have the materials now here in the shaded mode. All of these files will be available on my website ComputitionalDesign.com under the free tab, so you can use this along with the other examples that I'll be showing here at the end. So with this, now let me show you how to take this and scale it to a particular size, because at the moment this is 0 to 1. So let's say this would be 1 inch or 1 millimeter. It's very tiny. So now we can scale it up to be a particular size. Now remember, this is a 1-to-1. So now let's take the initial location. So it's going to be this plane or the initial point here at the corner. So to create a parametric point, we'll go to construct point, and that will be the point that goes into the plane input for the entire design. And since we have the Boolean toggle on as true, we'll turn it off to false. Then we can also disable the preview on everything else. And let's go back here to this point. Now we can use that point to scale from this point. So the center or the location to scale is going to be that. Then we'll go here to the end. Scale the surfaces. We'll be scaling it by a factor, so the factor is going to be the size. So if we want it to be 24 inches long, it's going to be 24. So we'll go to 24.50. And we can also bring in a boundary frame. To do that, we'll get the plane edges. So I'll go here to a curve component, which will give me the polyline for the edge. And we can use this and also scale it. So we can bring this over here and scale it along with that, or just in a different component. So now we have a 24 by 24 frame that we can use, and we can also display what it's going to look like using custom preview. And I'll disable the preview on everything else. And there you go. Now you can scale it up. So that is the reason why I was showing you from 0 to 1, using these numbers kind of small to start, because when you have 0 to 1, you can multiply by any value to make it whatever size you want. So with that, hopefully you found that interesting and that useful. Thank you very much for being here. I post videos like these every week where I share with you exercises and techniques so you can learn parametric design. This particular one is more about using images to create gradients and extracting the colors from it. I've seen a lot of abstract art that is very much like this. I don't know if they do it by hand or with computers, but this is one way where you could use computers to create some abstract art just from images. So I hope to see you on the next one, and stay tuned for the few other examples that I'll be showing here at the end.